Welcome in to CBS News 24/7. I'm Elizabeth Cook. The nomination for a top Trump position could be in jeopardy. We break down the sudden shift at the White House today. And wildfires raging across the Carolinas. We are live on the ground outside of Asheville, where the aftermath of Hurricane Helene is making very difficult for firefighters beating back those flames. The nomination for Elise Stefanik to become the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations hanging in limbo today. Those conversations began earlier today. CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman joins us now. Willie, we don't have too many details quite yet, so walk us through what you're hearing from our sources at this hour.
Hey there, Liz. Good to be with you on this Thursday afternoon, or morning for you, I should say. As sources tell CBS News that the nomination for Elise Stefanik to be the UN ambassador is in jeopardy, and there are ongoing conversations about whether or not that nomination should be pulled. Now, we'll point out that Stefanik is a close ally to President Trump. That has been the case during the campaign, of course. One of the things I also want to mention is that there's a very slim majority in the House. They can't afford to lose any votes there if they want to continue to move President Trump's agenda forward. Now, White House spokespeople have so far declined comment on this matter for now. We don't yet have a reason as to why this nomination would be pulled, but I just want to note that slim majority there in the House, and they can't afford to lose any vote if they want to move things forward, Liz.
This may be more about a numbers game there, Willie. I want to ask you, though, the White House moving forward with cuts to federal agencies. The latest department hit was the Health and Human Services. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right. We are reporting today that some 10,000 jobs will be eliminated at HHS, which of course is headed by Secretary Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We know that overall there will be 20,000 jobs cut. That's in addition to, that includes, I should say, early retirement and that buyout offer that the Trump administration offered workers to resign early with a couple of months left on the job. And now the HHS, the department is saying that this would save taxpayers some $1.8 billion. And remember, this is part of that DOGE effort, that Department of Government Efficiency effort to downsize the federal government, including agencies such as HHS. And sources also say that no FDA inspectors or CDC infectious disease personnel will be getting cut in this job layoff plan. I wanted to point that out as well. But still, nonetheless, this has concerned Democrats in particular, who have fiercely started to push back in some of the statements coming out from Capitol Hill against this move to downsize the federal government agency that is really in task and in charge of handling responses to infectious diseases, such as through the CDC, and inspections and such, and approval of drugs through the Federal Drug Administration, Liz.
Willie James Inman, live for us at the White House. Always good to see you, Willie. Thanks so much. Starting today, some people could have their entire monthly check withheld because the Social Security Administration overpaid them. The administration will begin clawing back overpayments by taking 100% of the beneficiary's monthly check until that money is repaid. This is up from the prior rate of 10%. And we're following market reaction as President Trump announced 25% tariffs on all cars and parts imported from other countries. This starts next week. So let's bring in CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady. First, Kelly, how could these tariffs impact the auto industry and, of course, people looking to buy cars this year?
Yeah, this is a really tough spot for auto industry as well as people looking to buy cars. Let's start with the consumer angle of this. So a 25% tariff on all cars that aren't made in the U.S. Prices are going to go up, likely by the thousands of dollars, depending on how much a car importer is going to pass on to you, the consumer. Now, in terms of timing, normally a dealer has about 60 days worth of inventory on their lot. So you won't see that price increase shoot up initially. But once we get past that, that's when you're going to start to see prices creep up. The other thing to think about is what happens in the auto industry. I mean, the stocks, I was just checking them before I hopped on with you, Liz. GM, Stellantis, Ford, all down significantly today, anywhere between 2 to 7%. And that's because these automakers now have to deal with a number of different things. How much of that tariff do they pass on to consumers? Consumers, by the way, who have already started to pull back spending and may not be able to handle those price increases. They also have to think about, do they move manufacturing here? Do they build plants here? When we have seen this tariff back and forth and this uncertainty really impact companies and investors alike, because that's going to require billions of dollars and years, Liz, right? I mean, it takes a couple of years to get a plant up and running. So the auto executives that I'm talking to, they feel caught between a rock and a hard place. The sort of party line coming out of the auto manufacturers that we are hearing is they want to do this. They want to bring manufacturing here, but it's just going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely. President Trump may not even be in office when it all takes effect. He also said he would consider reducing tariffs on China to seal a TikTok sale. Is this enough incentive for ByteDance to change its stance on selling TikTok?
I love that you brought this up because I was listening to the press conference yesterday and my ears perked up at that, because that was kind of the first time that we heard President Trump say, well, maybe I would reduce some tariffs on China. I mean, he's taken such a hard line against China. Remember that TikTok deadline of sell or buy, that comes up next week, April 5th. We do know, and I am talking to sources on some of the potential buyers, talks are ongoing, but ByteDance has been unwilling to sell thus far. And I think it's a really interesting question to ask. If China, the country, were to put pressure on ByteDance and say, hey, this would really help us from an economic standpoint when we are struggling because we want to get our products to American buyers, maybe you do a deal here. So definitely something that we're tracking. And I would be very curious to see the ownership, who buys it.
Yeah.
A lot of things percolating right now.
Yeah, that tariff is a major bargaining chip. I got to ask you about this, Kelly, because it impacts a lot of people. Social Security, the administration will start clawing back overpayments, as we mentioned earlier, from recipients. How do overpayments even happen? And how will this move impact people? They're not going to get a check?
Okay, so context, about $1.5 trillion payments in Social Security are paid to 73 million Americans. And how overpayments happen is maybe you haven't updated your income or your marital status, or the Social Security Administration calculates it improperly. And so that money goes into your account. Now they want you to pay it back at 100%, and they're going to withhold those Social Security checks if you are one of those people that has been overpaid. They're going to withhold that until that overpayment has been paid back in full, or you can write a check. But just a couple of things to keep in mind, because I'm sure if you're at home listening and you're thinking, well, how do I avoid this from happening in the future?
Right.
Make sure you create a record at ssa.gov. I think we've got a graphic we can throw up, and always update your income, your marital status, and your work status. I know that that's frustrating to always be on top of it, but better do that than find out, hey, I actually owe the government money, Liz.
Okay, so go to ssa.gov, make sure all your information is up to date, and you can hopefully avoid maybe not getting paid what you think you should from these Social Security payments. All right, Kelly O'Grady, thank you so much. Really great information there. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance, his wife Usha, and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz are scheduled to visit a U.S. military base in Greenland tomorrow. It comes as President Trump continues to escalate interest over the U.S. taking over the Danish-controlled territory. And that has officials in Denmark condemning that messaging. And the CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams reports Trump says a U.S. takeover is needed for national and international security.
We've heard President Trump talk a lot in recent months about taking over Greenland. So we came here to find out why he wants this remote place to become U.S. territory. Now, Greenland is roughly 3 times the size of Texas, mostly covered in ice sheet, with a population of about 56,000, mostly Inuit, who are indigenous to this place. And for now, it is a semi-autonomous part of Denmark, which is one of America's NATO allies. The US military base that Vice President Vance and the Second Lady will visit is about 1,000 miles north of here, Greenland's capital, Nuuk, and a very long way from where most Greenlanders live. That base could help protect the US from ballistic missiles if it's attacked, because the shortest route for Russian missiles to hit the US would be via the Arctic. Now, President Trump says he wants to take control of Greenland for security reasons, and he's refused to rule out using force. Some important background to that is that the US and Russia are vying for military dominance in the Arctic, and climate change is melting the ice and making lucrative mineral reserves more accessible here in Greenland. Some people here have told us they believe what Trump really wants is Greenland's natural resources, and they do not trust him. A recent poll here found that 85% of Greenlanders do not want to be part of the United States. This is not the first time the US has tried to take over Greenland, though in the past it's been via negotiation. The US even offered Denmark $100 million for Greenland back in 1946, equivalent to more than $1 billion today, though that offer was firmly rejected. Back to you.
Thank you, Holly. Coming up, prosecutors say Luigi Mangione is getting special treatment. But they say the man accused of murdering the United Healthcare CEO is getting in prison, including love notes. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Word today of a major arrest of a high-level leader in the notorious international MS-13 gang during an early morning raid in Northern Virginia. Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel say the man arrested is one of the gang's top 3 leaders in the U.S. At a press conference today, they said the 24-year-old El Salvadoran national was in the country illegally. They vowed to continue similar operations against that gang.
MS-13, they are organized, they are violent, they are committing homicides throughout our country. They are one of the most dangerous gangs in our country, and we are going to fight until they are completely dismantled.
So let's bring in CBS News legal contributor Caroline Polisi. Always great to see you, Caroline. Now, with the announcement of the MS-13 gang leader, do you see this as a Trump administration's way of justifying more of these types of arrests and deportations?
Absolutely, Liz. You know, Attorney General Pam Bondi was extremely proud of the outcome of this task force, which she revealed had been ongoing for about 4 weeks. And what's been happening here is that, you know, in this slew of executive orders that the Trump administration issued very early on in his presidency, one of those designated MS-13 as a terrorist organization, which then in turn allowed ICE to essentially issue these memos that would deputize state and local officials to work with the feds essentially in deporting and arresting who they believe would be illegal immigrants as part of this gang. And you heard from Governor Youngkin in this press conference really laud the application of this really joint effort on the part of state and local officials with the feds, and sort of giving a warning for sanctuary cities and or jurisdictions, both in Virginia and elsewhere throughout the country, to essentially get on board or else, really. And so this is definitely a harbinger of more to come. I think you will see state and local officials being putting more and more pressure on them, especially in these so-called sanctuary designated cities, to really sign up for the federal enforcement and ICE agenda in these sorts of deportations and arrests.
And Caroline, there's also an update on the battle over deportation flights. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, an appeals court has recently upheld Judge Boasberg. He's a district court judge at the D.C. level who had temporarily blocked those flights from Venezuelan nationals in this mass, arrest and potential, trying to deport many of those nationals. They upheld this decision by Judge Boasberg, who's been in the limelight recently because Trump has really taken a lot of issue with his ruling, called for his impeachment, because he's really standing in the way of his use of this Alien Enemies Act. You may have heard that's been on the forefront of this litigation since the beginning. Trump is using this act to essentially say he has free reign and executive power to really do whatever he wants without due process. And the issue there, this judge has stopped him, at least for now. They haven't really looked at the merits of this case, but it is interesting that an appellate court did uphold the district court's ruling, at least for a temporary pause on those deportations while they analyze really the issues, the deep legal issues having to do with the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act.
Caroline Polisi, our CBS legal contributor. Thank you so much, Caroline.
Thank you, Liz.
All right, breaking news. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is taking questions on an overseas trip. Let's bring in CBS News correspondent Chanel Call in our newsroom following this story. Hey, Chanel.
Hey, Liz, good to see you. So Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he is speaking this hour at a press conference in Guyana. We've been tracking this for you. And moments ago, he was asked about that Tufts University student who was picked up by ICE agents in Somerville, Massachusetts yesterday. Let's listen to this Q&A live.
Of this security agreement that we signed today and want to continue to expand upon.
We will now feed our final question from our visiting media.
Thank you so much. Vera Bergengruen with Wall Street Journal.
They're very tough. Be careful. All right. No.
Secretary Rubio, when you and President Bukele, you mentioned Tren de Aragua several times, when you and President Bukele negotiated the deal to transfer the U.S. deportees to his prison in Secot, did you discuss any provisions to ensure that individuals mistakenly identified as gang members would have access to legal recourse, or that they can secure their release if they are wrongly
Yeah, we have that list was carefully vetted, provided to us by Homeland Security. We have confidence in it. What we negotiated is the reality that they in El Salvador comply with all the international requirements for imprisonment. So we sent them people. It was a combination of people, gang members, people we knew were involved in activities that were not productive to the United States. All of them removable in terms of our laws, all of them. Every single one of them was someone who was removable from the United States, irrespective, and MS-13 members, many of whom are Salvadoran, that we had identified as MS-13 members that they had helped us identify as well. So it was a combination of people that we sent. And, we may send more. We'll see. I mean, it's up to their willingness to accept, but we're grateful to them for the opportunity to do that. And remember, one of the reasons why we had to send some of those people there is because at the time Venezuela wasn't taking their people back. The Maduro regime, I say Venezuela, but it's not the Maduro regime, was not taking their people back. They refused to take people back, their own people. They have an obligation. If you are a country and someone is illegally in another country, you have an obligation to take those people back, whether they're criminals or not. Venezuela said they wouldn't take them back. So we had to find a place to send them, especially the ones that had records or ones that we had strong suspicions and evidence that were involved in illicit activity. And so we had to send some to El Salvador because of that. Now they've taken them back. And one of them yesterday gets off an airplane, and this narco trafficker Cabello greets him and hugs him on the tarmac. Now, what I heard, ultimately, by the way, is that some of these gang members we sent back were so bad to Venezuela, they were so bad that after hugging them, maybe not this guy, but I don't know, they had to put 4 or 5 of them back in jail because that's how dangerous these people are, even though they hugged them on the tarmac and put on this show. These are some really bad people. Tren de Aragua is one of the most dangerous gangs the world has ever seen. Okay? When they were held temporarily in Guantanamo while being transferred to Honduras, because that's when the Venezuelans picked some of them up, the Marines at Guantanamo said these are some of the roughest people we've ever interacted with. They were worse than the Al-Qaeda guys that were in their jails. Think about that. So that's who we're getting rid of, and we want to get rid of more of them.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, this brings the end to our media conference, and I would like to invite His Excellency and Secretary Rubio for a photo op right on the stage.
All right, Liz, we've been listening live to Secretary of State Marco Rubio taking questions from reporters after a news conference wrapped up in Guyana this hour. And you heard there a lot of the questions this hour focused on President Trump's mass deportation plans, specifically cracking down on both undocumented people who are living in this country, but also non-citizens, so folks who are living here on visas, work visas, or student visas, who they say support terrorist organizations. So we'll continue to keep a close eye on this story. And I also want to mention, Liz, we've been following another story taking place in Europe today. There was a summit that took place in Paris earlier today. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was there, and he talked about how lifting sanctions against Russia is dangerous. Notably, he was also asked by a reporter what the relationship is right now with the U.S. following that very fiery Oval Office meeting a couple of weeks ago that we all remember went awry. He says he still wants to work with Washington, and he also stressed that the American air defense systems are so key for Ukraine during this war, but he also said he really needs to see security guarantees before entering a ceasefire deal.
I've been telling him from day one of our talks. For me, it is important to have Ukraine in a strong position at these talks, so that we would have a chance to end the war through negotiations, and not just to end the war, but have a fair peace, a lasting peace, so that tomorrow the war won't break out again. What I want these guarantees from the United States. And the issue is not how I view Trump. And I told Trump about this. I told him, look, but in 3 years, there will be another president in your country. And in 10 years, there will be yet another president in your country. But the peoples of Europe, the people of Ukraine, the people of the United States will still go on, will still be there. And if today Putin guarantees to Trump, guarantees something, and you believe this, Mr. President Trump, then after you, he may break what he has been telling you, even if you believe in something. Who is going to be responsible for that? For us.
So, Liz, quite a pointed message there to U.S. President Donald Trump. And hey, remember that mineral deal that was supposed to be ironed out during his last meeting here in the Oval Office with President Trump? Well, Zelensky today says that that deal is in flux. He also added that America can certainly influence how this war ends and when it ends, but says Europe must also be included in peace deals going forward.
All right, CBS News correspondent Chanel Call, thank you so much for that, Chanel. 6 tourists were killed when a submarine sank in the Egyptian Red Sea. Crews managed to rescue the remaining 39 of the total 45 passengers and crew members on board. The Russian consul said most of the people inside that sub were Russian. Officials did not say how or why the submarine sank. But this isn't the first time this kind of thing has happened. Back in November, a tourist boat sank in the same area, killing 11 people on board. To New York now, and a new development in the case of the man accused of killing the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Prosecutors in the case against Luigi Mangione say Mangione is getting special treatment. Prosecutors also raised questions about a bag of clothing that his lawyers gave him to wear before the hearing. Now, inside of that bag were heart-shaped notes. One reading, "Know there are thousands of people wishing you luck." Mangione also wants a laptop. His defense team recently filed a motion requesting permission for him to use one to review evidence. Right now, attorneys with the DA's office are fighting that request. To New Jersey now, where a child was left with serious injuries and 3 other people were hurt when a school bus overturned. This happened in Wall Township this morning. Investigators say the bus collided with the van and overturned, injuring the bus driver and 3 children. And our feeds taking you live to Denver now, where we could see record heat today. Interesting, because this is, we're still kind of in the beginning of spring. We're not supposed to be this warm, Jess, and it feels like, the weather these days is sort of turned on its head across a lot of the country.
Absolutely. I mean, we were breaking records this week in areas like Texas, New Mexico, all the way over into Southern California for daytime highs, and that heat stretched its way up all along that west coast to Seattle, too. What we're seeing now is more of the same, but just in different locations. Throughout this afternoon, I'm going to pull up the map real fast and show you some of the record-breaking areas in just a bit. But first, let's start off with everyone's temperatures. In areas like Salt Lake City, we're at 76 degrees today. Today in Denver, we're at 78. That's where we're going to break records this afternoon. So let me drop this and actually show you some of those record-breaking cities, to include areas all the way down in Arizona, stretched all the way over into Missouri, too. Now, I'm going to show you more behind me in just a second. However, what I want to get to the point across with is there's this huge area of high pressure that's been sitting over the West Coast. It's been keeping us warm, it's been keeping us dry for the most part, but that's going to look a lot different, especially in Texas, as we head into the afternoon hours today. Colorado, Nebraska, all the way over into Montana are all breaking records, with this summer-like heat still sticking around another day, with 80s in the forecast for us. That puts us about 25 degrees above average in areas like Rapid City. All the way over into Billings, we're closer to 30 degrees above average this afternoon. And we're seeing that heat stretch all the way over into Kansas, stretched over into areas like Nashville, Tennessee. So what's happening for us as we head into the coming days, we'll actually see more of that heat really isolate all the way down to the south. We're catching a break on the West Coast, actually below average in areas like Sacramento, where just a few days ago we were also experiencing such warm conditions. Down into Texas, too. Lastly, I just want to mention there's storms building right now. Areas like Corpus Christi could expect anywhere up to around 9 inches, yet these areas are still dealing with that warm weather, too. So it's warm, it's humid, it's sticky, it's hot.
Yeah.
But all that to be said, I mean, this is definitely not normal during this time of year, but it will change as we head into the coming days. We just have to get through this record-breaking stint first.
Just make it through the next few days.
I know.
Thanks, Jess.
Of course.
Well, coming up, we are on the ground in Texas, where the midwife accused of performing illegal abortions is in court. Janet Shamlian joins us live to break down this case. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Breaking news out of Amsterdam right now, where 5 people were wounded in a stabbing near a busy town square. We know that one person is in custody, and when asked about a possible motive, Amsterdam police said that it's still too early to tell. We're going to keep an eye on the story and bring you any updates right here on CBS News 24/7. Turning our monitors now to Capitol Hill, where lawmakers reacting to the breaking news we brought you at the top of this hour. Our sources telling us the nomination for Elise Stefanik to become the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations may be in jeopardy. Just moments ago, our cameras caught the House Majority Leader on the Hill. He had this to say about that nomination. Take a listen.
Elsa, CBS, how are you?
Good to see you.
Can I ask you if you've heard anything about Stefanik's nomination, whether it's going to be pulled?
I haven't heard anything about it. I strongly support Elise for UN ambassador. She had a great hearing. Hopefully that Senate confirmation gets done soon, because she served us great in the House. I'll miss her here, but she's proven she would be a great defender of President Trump's agenda at the UN.
Are you concerned about, the numbers in the House, though?
Look, our numbers are tight after the Florida elections. Hopefully we pick up 2 more seats. It's always going to be a tight majority. That shouldn't hold Elise back.
Has she said anything to you about her status?
No, she's told me in the past that she was going to wait till these Senate, these elections in Florida before, it moves forward in the Senate. But that's happening Tuesday of next week, and so I would hope the Senate moves her right after that.
And moments ago, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries quickly addressed that news during his weekly press briefing. Take a listen to that.
Republicans are in free fall right now. House Republicans are fighting with Senate Republicans. Senate Republicans are fighting with House Republicans. House Republicans are fighting with each other.
All right, CBS News congressional reporter Torian Small joins us now to break this all down for us. Torian, a lot going on today, but can you give us some context here? We know that she didn't vote during this morning's vote series, but how did we get to this point?
Yeah, her absence could be an indicator of just the uncertainty around her confirmation moving forward. Just to remind our viewers, this has already been a process that has been slow-walked compared to other nominees or appointees by the president who have had essentially a fast track to ultimately being confirmed by the Senate. According to sources familiar telling CBS News, they believe that this is a decision that would ultimately fall on Stefanik herself. herself. There hasn't so far been pressure from the White House to yank her nomination, but it is clear that all parties involved are aware of this razor-thin margin that Republicans have in the House. And this is also to be considered that the president is looking to push through legislation that is quite ambitious, that will take nearly every vote of the Republican Party in order for his will to be done here. So it's part of the reason why we're trying to take the temperature of lawmakers on the Hill now. But as we heard from leadership, they're pretty confident in their confirmation. We'll see what happens in the coming days and weeks.
And Tori, in Congress also dealing with the fallout of that Signal group chat incident. Senator Wicker submitted a letter calling for an immediate investigation. He had this to say just moments ago.
How long do you think it'll take to get a response to the letter that you sent?
Listen, Senator Reid and I have made a statement, and we've agreed that that statement stands, and we're not going to comment further.
So, Torian, walk us through the importance of this letter and what it means for Congress going forward. Do Democrats have any power here?
Yeah, so this statement from Wicker and his intent on investigating this, or at least starting an investigation into this, is a notable break from what we've been hearing from Republicans, especially Republican leadership this week when it comes to addressing the situation. A lot of them, many of them at the top, said that, yes, this is a pretty major screw up, but they said and they felt at that point that there was no need to look further into this, as they felt the Trump administration is doing course correcting on its own. But Wicker, as part of this committee, as well as the ranking member, Democratic member on that panel, also came forward saying that it's time for an actual investigation. The question this week has been about what can Democrats do. With this, there's now teeth to the bark that we've been hearing from Democrats about holding the administration accountable.
You sending an IG report? Do you know much about that? Do you know when that will happen? I'm looking forward to a prompt investigation, but an IG investigation is far from enough. There was a crime here, and likely an intentional crime. There should be accountability.
That's Senator Richard Blumenthal. We talked to so many senators, I forgot we actually had that sound queued up as well. But as you could see there, Liz, Democrats are well behind this push to get more information. The question, though, is how thorough will this investigation be for inspectors general's tasked to the Department of Defense? Trump, as he came into office, did a big clearing of inspector generals across agencies, so whether or not they would cooperate with this and whether or not that would then require this panel to issue subpoena power to go beyond just a letter was yet to be seen.
I know what you mean. It's like a laundry list of stuff coming out of the Hill today. Before you go, one more topic. A Senate hearing just wrapped up on the NTSB's preliminary findings involving the D.C. collision between an American Airlines plane and a military Black Hawk helicopter. What moments from that stood out to you?
Yeah, this was quite an emotional start to this hearing. I should mention that we heard from the heads of NTSB, FAA, also representative from the Army, but it was the families of the victims that was really at the center of the discussion around this. One major point that stood out was whether or not military helicopters should also share this very commercial airspace, especially without their signals, their ability to be detected on. And that's one of the things as we look through this preliminary report that lawmakers will be looking into as they look for accountability and to really do this post-mortem of this very tragic event, Liz.
All right, Torian Small live for us on Capitol Hill. Thanks so much. Meanwhile, wildfires continue to spread in the Carolinas at this hour. One of the worst fires, doubling in size in just 24 hours in South Carolina, prompting even more evacuations. And in North Carolina, firefighters were able to contain the two of the largest fires burning in the state. But another blaze is still 0% contained. CBS News national correspondent Deb Malkoff is live for us in Mill Spring, North Carolina. That's an area outside of Asheville, North Carolina. Dave, what are you seeing and hearing about the firefight?
Hi there, Liz. See this car right behind me? That's the governor's vehicle. Josh Stein just arrived here. Let's show you some pictures of his arrival here at the Incident Command Center. He made a couple of big moves today, and that was one of them to declare another state of emergency, and that frees up a lot of resources to fight these fires here in Western North Carolina. And remember, Western North Carolina is the area where we had Hurricane Helene come in and do a lot of damage about 6 months ago now. And now he is giving about $500 million out to the people of Western North Carolina who need access to their homes. They don't have any access to their homes because the bridges are out. These are personal bridges and personal roads, and those have been out for a while. We did a lot of reporting about that. We did an Eye on America report about that just a few months ago. So that is starting to fix itself by giving out that amount of money. But even if you throw money at that problem, it is still going to take months and months. These are big construction problems right now. But Liz, we have fires burning in generally the same area. But the problem is we have not only the roads and the bridges out, but we also have big trees that are down in the areas where they are trying to fight these fires. And I've been talking to firefighters a lot in the past few days, and they have told me this is a big problem because when you go out on those fire roads and you're trying to cut the lines around there, make sure that you're containing the fire, you're running into these fire roads that have big logs, big trees on top of them, and those logs that are down, those tree trunks that are down, those are also causing some fuel for this fire. So it is a big fight, not just the Black Cove Complex fire, but several fires, not only in North Carolina, but in South Carolina. In just a few minutes, we're going to go inside and talk to the governor about what he's seeing on the front lines and what he's seeing from the helicopters, what can be done to fight these fires that are raging, in some cases, out of control here in Western North Carolina, Liz.
Yeah, I'm going to look forward to see what he has to say. CBS News national correspondent Dave Malkoff live for us in Mill Spring, North Carolina. Thanks so much, Dave. Christy Nome speaking in Columbia right now. We'll bring you that. Stay with us right here on CBS News 24/7. A court hearing in Texas today for the woman accused of violating the state's abortion restrictions. Maria Rojas, who was licensed as a midwife when she was taken into custody, is facing 2 felony counts. She is charged with performing illegal abortions and practicing without a medical license. Now, according to the arrest warrant, Rojas ran 3 clinics near Houston. CBS News correspondent Janet Shamlian went inside the courtroom for today's hearing and joins us live now from Waller County. Janet, great to be with you. Today's hearing wasn't about those criminal charges, though, correct?
That's right, Liz. But it is the first time that we are seeing Maria Rojas in court or at all since she's been arrested a couple of weeks ago. The first person arrested for performing an abortion since Roe versus Wade was overturned and the laws here in Texas prohibiting anyone from performing an abortion. What she's in court for today is there is a temporary restraining order closing the 3 clinics that she runs in the Houston area. Her attorneys are asking that be dismissed, saying that her clinics serve a variety of purposes, that people are unable to get medical care right now. So that's what we're hearing today. But the interest, of course, is in those 2 felony charges, which will happen at a later date. We are seeing her on the stand right now. We're currently in a lunch break standing outside the courthouse. But she is on the stand answering questions from the Attorney General's attorneys who are asking her whether she ran a clinic, and she's answering to all of those questions, pleading the 5th.
And Janet, what happens next for the criminal case against her? Does that have to happen after this case is done?
Yeah, this is just a hearing on the restraining order. Her attorneys told me that they're sort of in a holding pattern right now because she has not been formally charged. However, we just learned within the last hour that she has bonded out, and they just put an ankle monitoring device on her, and she's got to go back to the jail after this proceeding, but she'll be free starting tonight, and she has been held since she's been charged a couple of weeks ago now, Liz.
CBS News correspondent Janet Shamlian live for us in Waller County, Texas. Thanks so much, Janet. Coming up, a little bit more news for you. Look at this video to our monitors of a little boy slipping through a White House fence, the White House fence, not a White House fence, the White House north lawn. And as you can imagine, the U.S. Secret Service gave him a personal escort off and back into the arms of his parents. A friendly escort, though. All right, check this out. A man risked his own life to save a cat in trouble. This happened in central Peru. A cat was stuck on a rock in the middle of an overflowing river there. A man heard some meows and then decided to help the stranded little guy. Yeah, this was amazing. He even tied a rope around his waist and waded through the fast-moving water. He did make it back to shore with the cat soaked and still crying in his arms, and luckily they were both safe. That rescue happened this weekend after intense rainfall caused rivers to swell. Well, our social media team has more great content like this on TikTok and Instagram, so please follow us at the handle CBS News. And we're getting a first look today at the trailer for the movie Rust. The indie Western has been overshadowed by the 2021 fatal on-set shooting of Helena Hutchins, the film cinematographer, by Alec Baldwin. Now, involuntary manslaughter charges against the star were later dropped. Rust has already been screened at the film festival celebrating Hutchins' work. The movie theater's release is set for May 2nd. And our very own Gayle King is gearing up for a trip to space. The CBS Mornings co-host is one of the 6 crew members taking part in Blue Origin's 11th human flight that travels 62 miles above the Earth's surface. The crew is scheduled to blast off on Monday, April 14th, and it will be an all-woman space flight. All right, well, much more ahead right here on CBS News 24/7. Any moment now, President Trump is expected to sign new executive orders from the Oval Office. Stay with us right here on CBS News 24/7. Lindsay Reiser is next.